All right, guys, I want to share with you 5 key training questions that often never get asked or asked frequently enough, but they are essential to having an injury-free, consistent, and successful training year. Now, what I want these questions to be for you is are going to be questions that you can really start to kind of unpack yourself, but also you can start to ask those around you. Those are you're able to soundboard your training with, your health with, whether it's a training partner, your partner in general, but your coach, someone who you can actually have good conversations around your performance. Because these questions are questions that will stop you in your tracks. They are questions that are uncomfortable for some people to try and answer because they're outside their remit potentially. They don't have the clear answers to. And I'm not saying that I have all the answers to these questions, but they are certainly questions that I'm constantly going round in my mind when I'm working with any individual, because they are going to give us the underpinning to this kind of the next run of 6 months of training, the next 12 months of training. If we're going to put a load of training volume on top of your already busy lifestyle, what are these questions going to what are the answers to these questions going to look like? And we want to have confidence with these kind of questions because we want to, and if not, because we then want to start to unpack it and go, right, how can we start to answer these? How can we start to kind of integrate better behaviors around these? And so these are somewhat confronting. And, a lot of the time when I ask these with a level of empathy because, they are going to reveal the obvious weaknesses, the gaps in someone's training program. They're passionate. They've already locked in their training goal. They know they've got a race, an event booked. They may be struggling with an injury and they've seen multiple health professionals and these questions have never been asked. And this is the thing, guys, like these questions aren't getting asked frequently enough because there's a lack of education. There's a lack of kind of confidence in just asking these questions because these questions are coming from an experienced coaching background where, you're not just problem solving one issue. You're looking to work with the individual across multiple different areas of their health and performance. So guys, straight off the bat, probably one of the most obvious questions to ask is, do you regularly strength train? Do you regularly integrate some form of strength conditioning, habits, routines, behaviors into your lifestyle? That in its simplicity can be the one that stops people in their track immediately. They will come back with answers like, oh, I've done some in the past. I've got some physio exercises I do. I've got a core routine that I lay down on the floor and do once or twice a week. I do a little bit of stretching. I do a little bit of mobility work. There's nothing concrete there. There's nothing significant. There's no real habits, behaviors. There's no progressive kind of individualized exercises and drills that are working on your said areas of weakness. That have you've been reviewed. You've never had your movement mechanics looked at. Those previous injuries that you've had, have they been reassessed? And are you now functioning on a relatively symmetrical level? Like, do you have equal levels of power, left versus right side, whatever the injury was? Do you have confidence through your lower back, your hamstring again? Whatever that said issue is. So this is a very confronting question and one that can actually be easily actioned on, like just starting to integrate some form of strength training exercises. I mean, a lot of people, you can go out and you can start just by working on your mobility a little bit more. You can work on some good exercises that work on your range of motion. You can you've kind of got a good idea as to what your strengths and weaknesses are. You can start to work on those said weaknesses, they'll be recognized because you lack confidence through one side over another. You feel like you could jump and land on one side more confident than the other. But it may be revealing, but it's one of the most obvious. And it's one of the quickest ways that you can guarantee a more injury-free, more consistent levels of performance throughout the whole training year because you're building a body that can tolerate the work ahead. It's a real naivety, guys, as to think I'll do a little bit of strength work and that will carry me for the next 6 months. I'll add volume, I'll add intensity to my training program. I'll build up to 6 days of running a week. And yet I'm still working with this tired, weak chassis that started the program. It can't be the thing. You've got to be working on that body all the way through. Otherwise, it will fail you. It will fail you time and time again. So working on that strength conditioning work, having warm-ups for every training session, little drills, having recovery exercises, protocols off the back of your training sessions, whether they're run, ride, swim, whether they're, you want to be doing these little behaviors, and you certainly want to be working on your maximal strength, your power. You want to be working on making sure your body is relatively strong across the whole body, from your core to your upper body, lower body, single leg strength, posterior chain strength, ticking all those boxes. Number 2, have you ever had a performance blood check test? Have you ever had your bloods looked at in the last 12 months, 24 months, 5 years, last 10 years? Again, very revealing. And some people can feel it quite, why is that important? But just strip back what we're trying to achieve here. Like, we are trying to push your physiology. We're trying to see what you're capable of. We want to, and you've potentially transitioned through different chapters of your life. You are now working, you are of a certain age. You're a man, you're a woman, you're a person who has got a lot of other stresses on your life. Things are always changing within us. And every person I've ever worked with it's very powerful to know what we're starting with. It's not the first thing that we look at, but it's certainly a part of the conversation. What do your bloods look like right now? The simplest things like being low in iron can actually can leave you feeling depleted. Your recovery will be compromised. Your sleep will be compromised. Your just day-to-day energy will just be fluctuating and feel volatile at times. Going further, looking into your hormones, your basic levels of estrogen, progesterone, your testosterone as a man, and as a woman, you're going to want to know what these blood markers are doing, where they're at, and then we can work from that. As I said, I've said this, a lot of times before, where once you have this type of information, you can act very, very quickly. We live in a wonderful time now where you can actually you can start to manipulate your nutrition. You can start to bring in some supplementation. You can do whatever is required to bump those numbers up. And you literally will see overnight differences in your behavior, in your recovery, in your kind of mental clarity, because we've established this baseline. We facilitate this, but we work with external, obviously, testers. We will provide the key blood markers so that you can go to your GP and get these looked at. But guys, it's the lowest hanging fruit, really understanding your blood and hormonal health. And again, it can change within the space of 6 months, 12 months. Now, I've seen it numerous times, men and women, where they've ramped up their training volume and they haven't been aware of the deficits that they've been accumulating in the background. So having had a performance blood test, where could you go? Go to your GP. You can speak. There's numerous different performance blood testing sites that you can go to, and you can be getting this done. And it's very, very empowering, guys. Number 3, do you incorporate regular rest or deload phases within your training? Are you good at recovering? These, again, very confronting question. But again, it tells us a lot about your psychology, about your relationship with your training, whether you're, someone who knows that they're going to have to deload at times, that is going to have to kind of pull back to then push on again. That is someone who has potentially understands the physiology of it more, they've been training long enough, or they have this kind of, level of experience, maturity to their training where you can't just simply be pushing your body all the time. The body will need bouts of time where it needs to recover, adapt to all the training that you're doing. If you're just following a program that isn't significantly deloading you by 25, 30% every 4, 6, 8 weeks, you're playing with fire, because you're just assuming your body can keep tolerating all that said work, all those adaptations, in terms of your protein resynthesis, your glycogen restoration, all those things that your body is doing in terms of recovering from all the stress that you're putting through it in your training. Are you giving it a quality chunk of time to do that? Are you giving your mind that time to return to a level of just or give you a bit more hunger back? Return that motivation back. There's something to be said about when you're constantly doing something, there's a wear and tear to it. It will bring a sharpness back into your training from a mental point of view. You'll be hungry again. You'll be hungry, chomping at the bit to get going again. But that's a wonderful thing to be experiencing. There is a lot of the time you can work with people who have literally just kept on going because it's part of their kind of lifestyle, their training timetable. But then they're now operating at 60% of their potential. They're clinging on to their levels of training because their bodies, they don't feel like they can push it any harder because they get a break. But it's because you just haven't allowed your body to fully recover or fully adapt. And realistically, you're probably you're recovering back to 80%, 85% before then dropping back into a program, up in the volume and intensity. But again, it will showcase your psychology as well. You've got to have a relatively good relationship with your training. We all love to do it daily, day in, day out, but there's times when you've got to read between the lines and know that your body just needs to dial back for the next couple of days, just to give yourself a little bit more time to adjust, to recover, adapt before pushing on. So do you incorporate enough regular rest and recovery? That is a great question. Could you be asking your people around you, could I be deloading a little bit more frequently? Do I need a bit more recovery in the next week or so? These types of questions, guys, I love getting challenged on, because it's telling me that the person I'm working with has that level of intuitiveness about them. There's an autonomy starting to build within them where we can really start to manipulate the variables. We can push harder, but again, we can because they can read their body better. Some people who are just following a program blindly, that's not going to be serving them well over the long term. We want to be able to push and pull at the right times. Alongside this, number 4, the question is, are you confident adjusting your nutrition as you progress through your training year, your training program? So as you're pushing towards certain events, you're building up that volume and intensity. Does your nutrition advance alongside that? Does it increase? Are you able to manipulate the amount you're eating, the fluids you're taking on board? Can you eat more at the right times? Are you able to pull back at the right times? This is another characteristic, and it's something that, again, very confronting. Some people's relationship with nutrition is poor, to say the least. They literally if they follow a very set routine. But again, the naivety of thinking that you can just add more training to that standard training nutrition that you've been having before, that kind of routine. Again, naivety, because you're going to end up finding yourself trying to push more when you don't have more in the tank. You're literally going to be kind of pushing through with very little reserves. So it's kind of being aware, and going, right, what could you be doing? And guys, it's just making those little incremental adjustments on a daily basis. But that consistency wants to be there. 3 meals, 3 snacks, across the day. You've got you've got the smoothies, protein shakes, little bars, your little snacks in place to kind of carry you over that threshold. 100 calories here, 100 calories there. It's just going to give you that little bump week on week that's going to then support the ever increasing volumes and intensity of the training. You can get away with not doing this, by the way. You can literally just not do any of this, but you are surviving a program. You're surviving the year until you suddenly can't. And this is what you often see when in kind of the overtraining syndrome, where people are struggling to kind of, there's a reoccurring injury theme. There's you just don't feel like you can push your body harder. And it's because of these sort of deficits are built up over time, especially around your nutrition. And then last but not least is, do you adjust your training around your work and family life? Are you able to be able to say no to a training session or be able to pull back on the volume and intensity or the time frames that it's asking of you if you are under stress from work and family? Some people will cram their sessions into the week. Some people will force those sessions into their life. It's very hard to see that. Some people find it very hard to adjust their training loads, their training program around their lifestyle. We have to, guys. You want this level of flexibility, autonomy within your program. It's the thing that it could be the thing that truly unravels you the fastest, where you're just trying to follow a program to the letter. And again, there's a program that it's not reading between the lines. It's not helping you along with this. This is why you want to be nurturing this thought all the time. Is, okay, program says this. This is what actually the reality of my life right now. How do I make these little adjustments? What session could I be potentially dropping this week? What are the key sessions I want to be hitting this week? Where could I be making up that said work in other sessions? So adjusting those sessions later on in the week. That is a level of autonomy that you want to be having. And these are the types of questions that you can be bringing to your coach, bringing to the table for yourself. These questions aren't meant to be disempowering. They're meant to be empowering, because these are things that you've got to find those percentage changes. They're going to be the things that go, okay, wow, I'm really noticing a difference. So guys, 5 questions. Have you ever had a performance blood test? Do you regularly strength train? Do you incorporate regular rest or deload phases within your training? Are you confident adjusting your nutrition as your training program progresses? And do you adjust your training around your work and family life? These are just some of the key areas that I just want I believe that you're going to consistently want to keep challenging and asking every 6, 12 months without a doubt. But also within that, every couple of months, every month, that you could be asking yourself every week with some of these questions, because it's just keeping you accountable to these kind of key areas that are going to support that training program, those training sessions that you're leaning into. This is kind of how I would always think about when we're building out someone's training, looking down the barrel of 3, 6 months down the line. Are these questions being asked at some point? And are they being leaned on? Are they being supported with, educated on? Guys, huge power that can be taken from these types of questions. And again, just ask the way we word these questions to ourselves. We could be relatively blunt, maybe, when they're being articulated to other people or people around you. Potentially, you're just you're bringing in these themes, these topics of conversation. So to tease out this type of information at times, I believe that these are quite confronting questions at different times for different people because of different reasons. And there are times when you want to focus on one area more so than another. But incorporating all of this throughout your training year, you're going to see this level of consistency that potentially you've never had before, because these qualitative questions are going to give you that data, that feedback from, within your training. You'll notice that your numbers are more consistent. You're going to notice that you're training more consistently. Those injuries that you used to have, they're dissipating. Your energy is more consistent. Your sleep is better. Your relationship with nutrition and recovery has never been better, because you ask yourself these critical questions, these critical thinking questions. And this is what is lost unless you are programming this in and you have the confidence to ask these questions into your algorithm or into whatever you're working with. These are the questions that are very powerful. And again, this is that humanistic qualities that we're looking for within a program, where you're looking to really find this is the sustainable, kind of healthy approach that we're looking for to then be able to push those greater levels of performance down the line. Guys, those questions, again, how we can go about asking them, how we go about kind of seeding them throughout our program, that's obviously what we're always looking to do on some level across the space of the weeks and months that we work with someone. And again, we can have these types of conversations ourselves. So keep this in mind as you kind of move into the next training week. If these haven't been asked recently, do so. Like, these are great questions as a coach, from a coaching point of view, are great to be able to kind of unpack and go, okay, yeah, let's look at that. Let's explore this. Let's review, go back and let's discuss this again. It's not a one and done thing. Like, these types of questions, there's so much benefits from reviewing and going back into these again and again, because you can see the progress that you're making, or to see where you've dropped the ball for the last couple of weeks, couple of months, which is normal. Pick it back up. Off we go again. All right, guys. Love you and leave you. Hope that was useful. Speak soon.